Hey everybody, I'm Emily Sweeney from the Boston Globe, and I want to thank you for joining us for this latest round of lessons brought to you by the New England First Amendment Coalition. During this class, you're going to learn about remote public access to government meetings in Vermont. Be sure to check out our previous classes on our YouTube channel and on our website, NEFAC.org. And before we start, I want to recognize the Estate of Gloria Negri for supporting these classes. Gloria was a trailblazing journalist at the Boston Globe for more than 50 years, and this program is part of her legacy of newsroom education and her lifelong commitment to local journalism. We also want to thank the Rhode Island Foundation and the New England Society of News Editors for their continued support. And a big thanks to you for taking the time today to learn how to keep government open and accountable in your state. With us today is Harrison Stark. Harry's a NEFAC board member and a staff attorney at the Vermont ACLU affiliate, where he litigates a range of civil rights and civil liberties matters in state and federal court, including cases addressing free speech, anti-discrimination, border surveillance, and government transparency. And he's going to walk us through remote access to government meetings in Vermont. Harry, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Emily. It's great to be here. And thank you all for tuning in. So without further ado, let's talk about hybrid and remote public meetings here in Vermont. Great. And so the first thing to know about hybrid and public meetings in Vermont is whatever else it is, it's brand new in that Vermont was operating under a series of time-limited provisions enacted during COVID-19 that have sunset on July 1st, 2024. The legislature recently passed Act 133, also known as S55, which has permanently changed the landscape going forward about what conditions remote meetings are permissible for and who may invoke remote meetings or hybrid meetings. And this new landscape has just gone into effect. Other provisions are going to go into effect on January 1st, 2025. And the legislature has created a somewhat intricate framework where the types of requirements for remote access differ based on what type of body it is, based on what type of power it exercises, and the body's relative resources. And so if you're going to go through the statute, it looks quite complex. Hopefully by the end of today, we'll have it broken down for you so you can know kind of rule of thumb what types of requirements we're dealing with and what your opportunities are for remote access for any particular type of meeting. So right up front, I just want to lead with the bottom line here. Feel free to pause the video, take a look at this slide if it's helpful. The overall simplified summary, if you just want a rule of thumb, is that the default rules for meetings going forward are that state non-advisory bodies, this is statewide bodies that exercise public power, must hold hybrid, regular, and special meetings. Local decision-making bodies, this is local bodies that exercise public power, must hold at least in-person regular and special meetings and may choose to meet in a hybrid fashion. For state and local advisory bodies, these are institutions that do not have final decision-making, but instead make suggestions to another government body that does. They essentially are afforded full flexibility. So they may continue to meet remote only, or they may choose to meet in person only, or they may choose hybrid meetings, which are obviously the best option in terms of access. So I want to go through these one by one. The first thing to know about this statute is that it draws a sharp distinction between advisory bodies and other public bodies. Now, what is an advisory body? This is a new distinction drawn in Vermont's open meeting law. The statute defines an advisory body as a public body that does not is key here, have supervision, control, or jurisdiction over legislative, quasi-judicial, tax, or budgetary matters. And so the first question you want to ask when confronting a government body that's meeting here in Vermont is essentially, does the body exercise genuine public power and final authority by itself? That is, does it have final statutory decision-making authority over anything legislative, quasi-judicial, tax, or budgetary? If it does, it's a non-advisory and decision-making body, which means it's subject to very particular requirements about access. And if we think about it, this framework makes some sense. The idea is that bodies that are really exercising true decision-making authority, and are reaching decisions that have real material effects on Vermonters' lives. We want these types of bodies to be the most accessible as a default rule. And as you sort of go down the scale of how much power a body has, and whether it's state or local, the requirements loosen a little bit. And so let's start with the most stringent requirements. This is for state non-advisory or state decision-making bodies. The default rule is starting this January, any statewide non-advisory body, this is a state body that exercises any sort of final authority by itself, they must hold all regular and special meetings as hybrid meetings, which means they have to designate a physical location and they have to have electronic access by default. So again, these are all just rules of thumb for sort of the starting presumption. When we're talking about local decision-making bodies, again, these are local bodies which exercise final authority over local affairs. The default rule is they have to, at the very least, hold regular and special meetings at a physical meeting location. Of course, nothing prevents anybody from having a hybrid meeting or offering remote access on top of that. But the default rule under the statute now is for any local decision-making body that's non-advisory, they must hold a physical meeting and may offer a hybrid format. For decision-making bodies at the state and local level, again, this is non-advisory bodies, there are also new rules about recording the meeting. So the default rule for both is that state and local bodies must electronically record their meetings. It means that the recording has to be posted at a designated electronic location, has to be retained for 30 days. Now, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of the body, in terms of what that recording looks like. For any state decision-making body, they're required by the new statute to post audio and video. For a state decision-making body, they can choose whether or not to offer audio or video. So it is permissible for a local decision-making body to post just an audio recording of the meeting. And again, I want to be clear, when we're talking about these new requirements, these are in addition to any of the standard open meeting law requirements that we've talked about during other training. So for example, decision-making bodies still have to post public minutes, everything like that. What we're talking about today are any new requirements under the new regime that have to do specifically with electronic or remote access. Local decision-making bodies also have a little bit of a safety valve that's not available for state decision-making bodies. There's an exception written in the statute that if the municipality can demonstrate that recording the meeting would constitute an undue hardship, it doesn't necessarily need to record that meeting. And the statute sets forth a multi-factor test, basically, for the municipality to consider, which says you have to look at factors including the size of the entity, whether it has sufficient personnel and staffing, the budget, and the costs associated with compliance. Again, this is new, so we don't know exactly how this is going to play out. But the default is that all municipalities really should, as a matter of course, be recording and posting those meetings. Now I want to talk about advisory bodies. Again, this is a new category in the statute. These are bodies that, again, do not exercise final authority, but exist in an advisory capacity. And for these bodies, which are really just formulating decisions that are recommendations and not actual final binding, are not finally binding in any sense. The idea is that these bodies get maximum flexibility under the statute. And so state and local advisory bodies can essentially pick what they want. They can choose to meet remote only. They could choose to hold in-person meetings in a physical location, or they could designate a hybrid meeting. Again, nothing prevents any sort of body from offering a hybrid meeting. And personally, that's what I would encourage because it maximizes access. Now, there are a couple of exceptions here. These are, again, default rules. For both state and local decision-making bodies, they are still allowed to meet fully remotely when there is one, a designated statewide emergency, or two, when there's a local incident. And essentially, these are to create pre-designated conditions under which decision-making bodies know that they go into a remote session. And one of the reasons for this is because the old open meeting law essentially didn't contemplate what would happen in a situation like COVID. And so to prevent the legislature from having to convene again in a state of emergency and create new open meeting law specific rules, this essentially tethers a set of conditions under the statute to a statewide emergency, which is otherwise declared, or if there's a local incident. And a local incident is defined much in the way you might expect. It's a local weather event, a loss of power, or a local emergency in some way that would prevent the body from meeting. And again, the statute contains essentially guardrails for this to make sure that this can't be abused. So it says before declaring a local incident, there needs to be a formal finding by someone with formal decision-making authority on behalf of the body, and there needs to be a written announcement. All right, and this next part is particularly key. Everything I just talked about are, again, default rules. They're essentially starting presumptions for any particular type of meeting. But what's critical under the new statutory regime is that for any type of meeting, regardless of what its default is, if you want different access, that is, if it's a remote meeting and you want to go in person, or if it's an in-person meeting and you want remote access, you have the opportunity to request that. So any resident of a jurisdiction served by a public body, any member of the body itself, or any member of the press can request that any body, regardless of its default rules, can provide additional access to a regular meeting. That is, by designating a physical location or a remote-only meeting location. Requests do need to be in writing. They need to be sent 2 business days prior, but importantly, you don't need to give a reason. So you don't need to justify your inability to show up or your reason to want to be there in person. All you need to do is say, yes, I'm in one of these 3 categories of members of the public, and I would like additional access. And the body has to grant the request unless there are a set of, again, predefined conditions. One is an all hazards event or a declared state of emergency. The other one is a local incident. And the third is if compliance would impose an undue hardship. And again, I'm just going to go back a couple slides. The undue hardship is this multi-factor test. This is new. So we don't know going into it exactly how a dispute about an undue hardship would be negotiated. So for example, if I wanted to go in person to a remote meeting and municipality said, sorry, we've determined that this would be an undue hardship, this will likely have to be worked out in the courts, I think, in some ways, or in particular disputes, because again, it's a multi-factor test. We don't know exactly which considerations will come to the fore, but it's very much the spirit of the new legislation that public bodies should be granting access where requested, wherever possible or feasible. Finally, I want to talk on a couple of additional provisions that the new statute introduces that are new to the open meeting law regime. First is that there are specific requirements for electronic access. So it's not enough to just post a link on some website. There has to be direct access. It has to allow for full public participation, and it has to have a component for free telephonic attendance. There's also a new regime for training. So state chairs of decision-making bodies, local legislative body chairs, municipal managers, and mayors now have to participate in annual professional open meeting law training. There are also new provisions to make sure that everyone in the public knows what happens if a municipality or a body is not following the open meeting law correctly. So now every municipality has to post on its website the provisions of the OML's enforcement provisions, which again are unchanged, as well as any procedures for submitting notice of an open meeting law violation to the Attorney General. So again, we've talked a little bit about open meeting laws before. Any person who's aggrieved by an open meeting law violation has to write a notice to the public body, and then can either go to court or they can refer it to the Attorney General. But there's a citizen enforcement regime that's critically important to preserving the open meeting law's requirements. And now every municipality has to post this on their website if they maintain one, so everybody knows how to take advantage of it. Finally, the statute established a working group, which takes together a bunch of stakeholders who are tasked with recommending best practices for running effective and inclusive hybrid meetings that maximize participation going forward. And this working group is going to be meeting a number of times throughout the next year and is required to consult with particular stakeholders like the Vermont Press Association. And so as the statute goes into effect, if folks are participating in public meetings and are seeing that there are particular wrinkles with how the law is being implemented, or for particular scenarios the law has failed to contemplate, this working group is hopefully going to be a really good opportunity to recommend further revisions, any changes, or a set of best practices that will hopefully iron out any wrinkles as this law is implemented over the next year. And I think that's really it for me. Again, the full statute is Act 133, S55. It's codified in a number of existing provisions that have codified the existing open meeting law. And as folks make their way through this legislation, once you understand this division between non-advisory bodies and advisory bodies, the statutory framework becomes a little bit more clear. But the bottom line is that this slide right here, which I have open, is the set of default conditions. And for any situation in which an individual wants to participate in a way that is not contemplated by these default rules for a regular meeting, they can request it. And this is how. I welcome any questions if anyone in the crowd has any.
Looks like we do have one question. Somebody asked, does the new statutory framework include requirements for live meeting transcription for those joining virtually? Very good question.
I am looking here in the statute, and I don't believe it does in terms of real-time transcription. As I mentioned earlier, there are existing provisions under the open meeting law that for any meeting, remote or otherwise, there need to be accurate minutes taken that reflect the actual business of the body and that are posted very quickly afterward. And so I think the idea is that if there isn't a transcription component, the minutes that exist for existing public meetings will essentially be carried over into this new context. But obviously, live transcription would be a significant improvement, not just for accessibility reasons. And I'm hoping that's something that the working group will take up. I also want to say that for kind of any additional questions that folks may have, either now or later, the Secretary of State has put out a particularly helpful Q&A and guidance on the new statute. Some of these materials are adapted from that. And so if there are particular deep dive questions that we haven't gotten a chance to cover here that come up later, I would encourage folks to check out the Secretary of State's guidance on the new statute. There's a helpful PowerPoint presentation as well as a Q&A.
Excellent. And we have another question. Stephanie asks, can I attend / ask for access to a local school board meeting in SU where I do not live? What about access to public input time?
That's a very good question. If you are not a member of the press, I believe you do have to be a resident of the jurisdiction served by the local body in order to make a request for remote access that they have to grant. Again, any individual, any member of the public can certainly request additional access, and I would encourage any local body that is implementing this to try to maximize public access in every event possible. And so it would be my hope that for something as consequential as a school board meeting, if anyone requested remote access, the school board would grant it. That said, under the statute, for a request that the body essentially is forced to accommodate, you would need to be a resident of the jurisdiction served by the public body, a member of the public body, or a member of the press.
Interesting. And I wonder, I mean, not to get in the weeds here, but if you weren't a member of the press, like what if you started a blog like that day, or, you know, relayed information on social media? Maybe I'm opening up other questions, but
no, not at all. I think that's a great question, and I think again, we don't know exactly how this will be implemented.
Mm-hmm.
I think that by far the best reading, which would maximize public access, is that you do not necessarily need to be an accredited journalist in order to be a member of the press for purposes of the statute, and that citizen journalism would be encompassed. I also say with school board meetings, the way the law is written is a resident of the jurisdiction served by the public body. In Vermont, obviously, we have tuition programs, and we have a number of elements of the education ecosystem where students can attend schools in which they're not a resident. And so It does not seem to me to be the case that a school board meeting necessarily, to qualify as a resident served by the public body for purposes of the statute, you don't necessarily need to be a resident of the school district, so long as you're a resident of somewhere that that school district could service. And with Vermont's tuitioning program, I imagine that would actually be quite expansive in a lot of cases. Again, if the particular district is not a tuitioning school, it is not open to other jurisdictions. It's a little bit different, but for many, I imagine that folks who do not reside actually where the school board is located may nevertheless qualify as a resident of the jurisdiction served by the public body for purposes of the statute.
Gotcha. And it's also interesting too to think, like, if any school district gets, state money in any way, I guess any state resident kind of has an interest in it, or could potentially. Let's see. So Stephanie just followed up and said that is exactly what I meant up here in NEK Choice District. Thanks. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in live. Encourage you to check out NEFAC's other classes. We have a lot of them. You can find them on our website, nefac.org, and our YouTube channel. And Harry, thank you so much for a great presentation and for answering these questions. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate everyone taking the time on Friday afternoon.
All right. Until next time, everybody.